In Western society, there's some talk about birth, endless talk about life, most of it mindless, and not much talk about death, at least not until someone we know dies. I wonder why that is. Today on Zippy Point.
Quick Zips by Zippy Point.
Quick and dirty. I'm Brock Romanek, and I'm a big fan of yous. So for most of my life, I've been scared shitless of dying. That's a natural feeling, not irrational really. And I never really talked about the fact that I was scared with anyone. I certainly didn't grow up talking about death in my family. We just didn't talk about it. I wasn't brought to funerals when the few relatives I knew died, back when I was a kid. And I had a few pet fish, one pet bird that died, but those weren't monumental events for me. One of my best friends from high school died when I was a senior in college. That was my first real taste of death. My high school friends, we all hung out for a solid week and morning when it happened. It was pretty intense, and I was in shock for months. So now flash forward 40 years or so. My first mini meditation retreat was with Pema Chodron. What a treat. She was truly special. And the topic for the weekend was death, and I did not know that going in. It wasn't advertised as a death retreat. And if you haven't experienced Pema before, catch her on YouTube. She sees things so clearly. She speaks so clearly. She delivers her remarks with common sense, with humor, and so much wisdom. It's amazing to listen to her. It gives me tingles every time I do. And she's pretty old at this point. So she spent quite a bit of that weekend answering questions. People lined up in a row and asked the important questions, the ones that you might not think to ask about until you hear them, and you'll instantly go, boy, wouldn't it be great to hear some insightful perspective on that? Many people at this retreat actually worked in the death industry, in medicine and hospice. So these people saw death a lot. They lived around it. They thought about it. So it was a fantastic weekend, and I learned a lot. So given that I live in a culture where that topic, death, is shunted aside, it was so interesting to hear it being discussed for 48 hours. It gave me a lot of food for thought that I thought about for months. And it made me pick up a bunch of books about the topic and learn about different perspectives on death. And it really made me think about it more, and now I can discuss it much more openly, and I'm not scared of dying, to be honest. I definitely do plan for death more. It's amazing how many smart people don't have wills, don't have contingency plans, don't give their loved ones an annual list of their passwords and other practical things like that to make the transition of their things, their assets, pass more easily. It's just so easy just to avoid the topic of death and not worry about it. But obviously going about life like that isn't a good idea. Anyway, if you want to start learning different ways to think about death, one book to start with might be Sungyo's Rinpoche's The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. It's a much easier read than the original book called The Tibetan Book of Death, and it really gives you food for thought. You don't have to necessarily buy into what the book says. That's true with anything you hear or read about or see, but it's always good to get other perspectives to see how others might think. And after all, death is a pretty big deal, and we should spend some time pondering about what it all entails, what it means. As for my actual funeral, I personally give that little thought. I told my wife it's up to her what she wants to do. I'm fine with nothing. I'm to be cremated, and anything beyond that is up to her and my sons. As Dan Rather noted in the end of this excellent article about him recently, someone came up to him once and said, "How many people show up at your funeral depends a whole lot on the weather." Ain't that the truth? Anyways, let me know what you think.